e grazie per l'invitazione. Mi chiamo Tamanini di Dual Citizen. Dual Citizen è un'agenzia di ricerca sulla green economy basato negli Stati Uniti a Washington DC. Oggi vado a parlare in inglese perché l'italiano è un po' difficile per me con le parole tecniche di green economy, ma dopo possiamo comunicare in italiano se avete domande, eccetera. Okay, so we do something called the Global Green Economy Index, which already has been described very well. This is an index that measures the green performance of 80 countries, as well as how experts around the world perceive that performance. Signora Ronchi has already explained a lot of the results, and you have in the reporting that you have received a very in-depth analysis of the results for Italy, and some examples of how we think Italy can improve both its green performance and also how the world perceives that performance. So please, I would love to later on during the Stati Generali exchange with you any questions that you may have. But today, I am not going to speak about the report. I'm going to look at this issue of green economy from a different perspective. I'm going to look at the issue from the perspective of the subnational point of view. And when I say subnational in English, I mean sottonazionale, the activities and organizations that exist in all of these economies that are not national governments. They are civil society. They are companies, corporate entities, and they are cities. And the reason I'm going to focus on these subnational areas is that I believe there are many examples where Italy is very well positioned as a country to build upon their success in these areas. So starting with the national and just some of the trends that we've seen internationally, Canada, as you know, just elected a new prime minister. And one thing that we found immediately in the Global Green Economy Index was that the perception of Canada went up quickly because this prime minister made a strong commitment to green economy and he communicated it very actively. This is something we see in many countries and obviously is something that is important for Italy as well. In Costa Rica has had many periods of time in the past year where they have actually generated 100% of their electricity from renewable sources. This is a very clear message that the media internationally picks up and they write stories, and it brings a lot of positive coverage to Costa Rica. The Paris Climate Conference. Here we had an example where the United States and China, as very large emitters of carbon, came together. They put some ambition on the table in terms of what they wanted to achieve, and there was a lot of global recognition of that. And we see this in the Global Green Economy Index as well. But what worries me is this slide, because what this slide tells us is a very challenging story. It tells us that if you follow the red line, you will arrive at the outcome that the INDCs, the agreements from the Paris Climate Conference, get us to by the end of the century, which is about a 3.5 increase Celsius of our global temperatures. This is not acceptable, and we all understand that. We need to be at least at 2 degrees Celsius, hopefully somewhere better. So the question becomes, if our national leadership, if governments are committing only to that red line, and we need to be at the green line, What are the forces in our societies, in our economy, that can make that happen? How can we make our commitments nationally more ambitious and closer to where we need to be? Well, here are several ideas. Students are extremely important, obviously, as activists around climate change. Students around the world feel very important about climate change, but also students are very important because increasingly green economy and climate are being integrated into the curriculum in university. This is helping to train and educate our leaders for tomorrow. NGOs, we are seeing some very interesting activities from non-governmental organizations using data to better communicate stories about the environment. This is one example from a group called Global Forest Watch, where through the internet, through your computer, you can actually see how land is being used in different parts of the world. So this is an example from South America and the Amazon, where you can see very clearly and go to very specific parts of the environment and understand better how land is being used and deforestation. Investors, and this is a group that often we don't think about. All of us in this room, we are investors. And one thing that I always say to colleagues and friends that ask me, well, what can I do? How can I change the pattern of investments globally? Well, I tell them, ask your investment advisor about ESG. ESG is a new approach to evaluating investments, not just from the perspective of return, but also from the perspective of the impact the companies in your portfolio have on the environment and social and governance issues. So for example, I might really like investing in Apple or Google as a company, but I, as an investor, should be able to know, is Apple, having a sustainable business model? Are they working to reduce their emissions? Are they working to use natural capital more efficiently? So everyone should ask their investment advisors, do you have ESG as a way to evaluate my portfolio? Now, going to companies, which I believe companies are some of the most important building blocks of the green economy, we looked for the first time at companies and we evaluated the 3 largest companies in the 80 countries where we were analyzing for the Global Green Economy Index. This is a slide that shows many countries that are very dependent on oil and gas exports. And we found that in these countries like Qatar, Russia, Saudi Arabia, the countries are not doing very well from a green economy perspective, but also the companies are not doing enough. The companies are not making commitments to reducing their emissions and greening their supply chains. But we also found some positive news. We found that many countries that have not so good results on the Global Green Economy Index, such as the United States, my country, South Korea, Australia, actually the companies in those countries are doing a lot. They're doing very well. So we found this difference between companies and countries where sometimes the energy, the activity, and the real leadership was coming more from companies than it was from the national governments. And I just point out here, these are 2 initiatives, CDP and also Climate Disclosure Standards Board, which are doing a great job gathering data and information and reporting from companies so that people like me and my firm can then go in and analyze it and understand better really where progress is being made. This is a great slide, I think, to just show you in the United States how much companies are starting to become active purchasers of renewable energy. So you can see here between 2014 and 2015, the large increase in the amount of capacity of renewable energy that these large corporations are committing to. This is something that I expect this year you will see even more, because companies are starting to understand that they must mitigate their climate change risks through being more dependent upon renewable energy. Again, good news for Italy on this topic. We found that in Italy, of the large companies that we analyzed, already we had climate reporting from all three of the companies. And we have also seen from one company the beginning of reporting on supply chain. So again, this is a very positive part of the Italian economy that can grow further. Companies can continue to do more in Italy to purchase more renewable energy to fuel their operations and to reduce their emissions and their dependency on natural capital in their operations. And I want to just finish on the topic of companies by communicating that this is not just something for big companies like Google and big energy companies. This is also something that SMEs, so smaller companies, can very effectively achieve by forming collectives. And we see this a lot internationally, where smaller companies in different industries are coming together and they're saying, okay, in my industry, we commit to, increasing energy productivity as a group of 100 companies. And as a result, we anticipate we can save or prevent 170 million tons of carbon emissions. So small companies are just as much a part of this discussion as larger companies. Now, lastly, in terms of this subnational discussion, I want to talk about cities. And this will be a topic tomorrow during the Stati Generali. And it is so important because what we see here is a very clear indication of how urban growth is going to look in 15 years. And you can see that the lighter blue are all parts of the world where we are going to see dramatic growth in the urban population. Much of this growth will be happening in the developing world, in Africa and in Asia. And I am sure that in those markets, there will be a very high demand for products and services that relate to resource efficiency and energy efficiency, two areas where we also have seen through Signora Ronchi's presentation, the strength that Italy currently has. I want to give some examples on this topic because there's so much amazing, innovative work being done around cities and energy efficiency. This is a map of Cambridge, Massachusetts, near MIT, the university. And MIT partnered with the city government, and they took the energy bills from everyone in the city, and they analyzed which buildings were spending the most on energy. And then they put that information on a map of Cambridge. And what it showed was there were certain buildings, there were certain neighborhoods where there was a huge opportunity to improve energy efficiency through incentives from government, from city government. There were other parts of the city where maybe there was not as much of a demand for investment. So this partnership with the university allowed then the city government to allocate funding and tax revenues more efficiently to retrofit, we say, to improve the energy efficiency of buildings. Obviously, this is something very important in Europe, where you have many centros históricos with very old buildings with maybe not very great energy efficiency. So city governments need to understand, where do we most efficiently allocate money? Here's another example around transport. I don't know if Uber is popular in Italy yet. Okay, so Uber is very popular in the United States. It's basically a taxi, where you can call on your cell phone and you find the cars that are in your neighborhood, and they come and find you, and you pay through the app. So it's a very high technology solution to transportation. Now, what's starting to happen in Washington, where I live, which I think is so interesting, is that people are starting to use Uber to make transportation more efficient during times of very high traffic. So for example, in the morning, if I take a car and you take a car and you take a car, we can use this technology application to combine into one car. And so we all go together, we all know that we're going to, Rimini Fiera, and so we can add efficiency to our use of cars in ways that hopefully reduces the congestion in cities. So this fusion of technology with transport, I think, is very powerful. And lastly, and this was mentioned earlier around recycling, we're seeing some very innovative uses of waste-to-energy technology to further resource efficiency. Because, as has already been mentioned, improving recycling is extremely important. Recycling is a core component of improving resource efficiency. But if you can also implement technology that can convert your waste to energy, then you have a double win. You have a win-win, because you are reducing the amount of total waste through recycling, and you're also converting waste to energy. And this example is from Singapore, a city that is an island, so they have very limited space for waste. And in 15 years, they have gone from a very bad situation with waste to a situation today where only 2% goes to the landfill. 38% generates electricity, and the remaining 60% of their waste is recycled. So again, this is the next step, I think, of resource efficiency that can be very, very important. So again, just concluding on this topic, Italy is doing a lot already. If you look at the reporting on initiatives related to cities and climate, Italy actually has the highest number of initiatives in Europe and the world. So to me, this is an indication that, like companies and like in civil society, there is a strong opportunity here for growth and progress in Italy. So in conclusion, I just want to emphasize that there is a lot of areas on the national level that Italy can improve, do more, take advantage of where they are already strong. And I think you will see in the report that we have put together more specifics on that. But I want to emphasize how important this subnational discussion is, how important civil society and investors like you and me are to improvement, how much companies can do. Sometimes companies can do more than national government, not only to purchase renewable energy and reduce emissions, but also to foster innovation and to start to build some new technology products that can be exported, hopefully, from Italy in the future. And lastly, cities, particularly in Italy, already have a lot happening. There's already a lot of activity in cities. So finding ways to convert that activity into products that can be then exported internationally into what we know will be a very big market for products around efficiency can be something very positive for Italy as well. So I thank you very much for your time, and I'm sorry for the English, but I hope we can speak in Italian after.